This is Traders Workshop with Adam H. Grimes. Hello, welcome to episode 12 of Traders Workshop, Q&A from a struggling trader. I'm your host, Adam Grimes. You can find more of my work at adamhgrimes.com, and you also should follow me on Twitter at adamhgrimes. So I get a lot of emails from traders at all stages of development, from people just starting, from people who've been trading professionally for many years, and everywhere in between. I got this email just last night that I wanted to respond to in this format because I think there are a lot of things here that will resonate with you, whoever you are, wherever you are on this journey. You've had many of these same questions. You may have some of them right now. This is, however, a little bit more of a personal email than some of the emails, so I'm not going to identify the asker by name. Let's call him C. Let me read the email, and then we'll go through it kind of section by section, and I'll respond to it. So he says, "Hey, Adam, you probably get many emails. Hope you can respond to me. I'm really desperate. I traded for about 3 years in a local FX firm. Then I lost my job, and I've been trying to be a profitable trader for about 3 months now. To be honest, I want to make more than 70% a year. I think it's achievable. During my time working, I never felt I had an edge. I just make technical analysis trades and cut losses quickly. I was profitable, but I was going to try to live making a small percentage of the account. What can I do to be better? I'm really in the worst time of my life so far. I don't know if this is just a dream or if it's really achievable. There are so many strategies on the internet, but none of them really seem to work. I really like price action and the possibility of trading with few or no indicators." So we have a lot of things here. And the first thing that really caught my attention was that he just put up front, "I'm really desperate." And I think that's something that we should think about because we've all been there. And I also, as I read this to you, I hope you saw the same, I don't want to keep using the word desperation, but the same despair, the same angst, the same desire to do something and not to even really know if it's possible. And I just gave an interview in which I discussed this several times in my career. I have been certain that I could not do it. And I've even asked the questions, does anybody actually make money trading? Is this even possible? Now, objectively, when I think about this outside of the emotional context where I was so upset, it was absurd because many times those questions came after years of consistent returns. For me, the struggle was when I changed to a new asset class. That was one of the places where I very, very consistently had struggles, sometimes had severe struggles. Going to, for instance, futures to, let's say agricultural futures to currency futures to stock index futures to individual stocks. Each one of these, for me at least, maybe other people don't have this experience, but I think a lot do. Each one of these was like starting over. And I'll tell you the worst was going into stock index futures. That was several years of struggle. And that came after several years of day trading currency futures, which is certainly not easy to do. And the stock index futures were a completely new level of not really complexity, but difficulty and challenge. So it's a very hard to put this emotional state into words. People have written about it, but I don't think people have written about it effectively from the trading perspective. You really need to read, let's say, the other literature of despair. When people go through loss or various upheavals and serious upsets in their life, the emotional struggles that people go through there, traders really go through. So, especially developing traders. So to see here, one of the first things that I would say to you is my experience is when you are in this state of desperation, your chances of success are very, very low. Now, I realize that's not what you want to hear, but I'm going to give you the cold hard truth. Yes, the short answer to your whole email is yes, it's possible to do what you're doing, but I think there are several things here, several ways in which you're making this more difficult. And one of the, I don't know what the word is, paradoxes, one of the ironies of trading is that if you really need to make money, it is extremely difficult to make money. That's also one of the things that I have seen in my trading. And other people have written about this too. And if you read between the lines, for instance, even if you go back to the Market Wizards books, and there was one interview I remember where somebody said something like one more trade and he would quit. He would basically put all of his chips on one trade. And of course, you can imagine the outcome of that. And there are all of these stories where traders, very, very common to say, okay, I'm going to do trading specifically over this time period to pay for a vacation, to pay for a car or whatever. And that very rarely works out. Why is this true? I don't know. And I suppose somebody with maybe more formal psychological insight would be able to tell you better. From a practical perspective, my experience has been when we think about something, we achieve those results. And if I really desperately need to make money trading, what I am thinking about is really the possibility of losing. And by the way, even the reason why I believe this is true, and I'm very careful to, and you probably noticed this in my speech, if it's something that I can research mathematically and really get my hands around, I have a high degree of confidence. And I will sometimes just say that, at least in my experience, things are absolutely true. I frankly don't understand. I think there are far too many trading, quote, educators or people doing trading psychology who speak with authority on psychological issues related to trading. I don't really see how anybody can do that, because if we're being intellectually honest, the true answer is we don't really know for sure. But I have seen in my own work over and over when either I need the money or I'm afraid of losing the money, or there's something else driving it. Even if it's something where, like, I can guarantee a way for me to lose quite consistently would be to open a trading account and show every trade, every result of that account. It's going to put a weight on my decision making that is going to change the way I do things. And I just saw that publicly here with one of the services we're running. We made a small adjustment, and a set of trades that I had done profitably for years, as soon as there were a lot more eyes on it, all of a sudden I struggled. And I realized very quickly in the space of a few weeks what was going on. I was able to make some adjustments. But there is this very strange, I often explain it to people, like if you're driving or riding a bicycle and you see something at the side of the road and you look at it, you focus on it, you have to be very, very careful not to veer toward it, right? And it's the same thing with your trading results. So to see the trader who sent me the email here, I would say, first of all, objectively, your need, your desperation to succeed puts a significant stumbling block between you and your success. Now, yes, you can completely change your life, change your universe, change your world with your trading. Yes, you probably can. We'll discuss capital in a moment. You probably can make enough money trading to support yourself quite successfully and do whatever you want. This is true. And I've said before, I think one of the mistakes I make in my own marketing and public speaking is that I don't emphasize that enough. I emphasize the negativity. What people perceive as negativity, I perceive it to be realistic, because in my mental process, did you just hear me hitting myself in the head on the microphone? And in my mental process, if we take care of the negatives, if we take care of all of the mistakes that we will make, the positive things are there. Most of my losses trading, outside of course, I wouldn't care about the normal statistical losses, but when I look at most of the periods where my trading has struggled, I might even say all, I did it to myself. I did it to myself with some idiotic aspect of my own psychology that I was not aware of or in control of. So if we can control those things, the upside will, to a very large extent, take care of itself. But what I believe you need to do, the first thing you need to do is you need to somehow create a framework where you don't need to succeed. And that's hard. And I hope you can tell. I'm not saying that flippantly. I'm not saying, oh, you should just have enough money that, of course not. And, I know people come from different parts of the world, and I understand that your situation might even be difficult for other people to really understand. I get that. But what I really believe you need is some constructive framework within which you can trade where you are not desperate for the success of your trading. So that's the practical reality of what you set up. It also is, by the way, I don't want to get too sidetracked on this, but it's why most traders find they trade so much more successfully with a secondary income stream. And when I say most traders, I mean traders who make probably far more money than you can imagine. It's very, very common to see people have several income streams. I don't want to say universal, but it might be almost universal, and certainly one of the biggest traders I personally have ever known, a man who took, I don't want to put dollars on it, but a lot, a lot of money out of the market. He believed that the two critical keys for success were that one, you did not truly need the money trading, and so which means you had to have some secondary income stream, and also working in a team. That's another topic for the future. So what do you need to do in your personal life to make this happen? I can't tell you. I suspect it is probably continuing to develop your career outside of trading. I have no idea what C does. I don't know his situation. And there are people who work mundane jobs and when I say a mundane job, I'm not saying that with any disrespect, but I mean a job that the person does not see as a career. They see it as, I'm just doing this to collect money to trade. If you can make enough money that you can live off of it and also have some extra money you can siphon into trading, it doesn't really matter what you do. You could sell hot dogs on the street. If you have a career, let's say you are a dentist or you're a computer programmer, well, I would say continue to develop that career, but now we also need to think about how you trade, right? Because if you are a dentist, you're probably not going to be day trading S&P futures on a 1-minute chart. That's the reality. Now, maybe you could trade the DAX futures if you live in the US, right? So you have to be very practical about this. Let's continue with the next part of the email. Traded for about 3 years in a local firm, lost my job, and I've been trying to be a profitable trader for about 3 months now. So you have had a major reset. The fact that and one of the things that I think C is missing here is that he was profitable. And this is, I was reading as I told you, I was kind of reading myself in this email because I remember thinking, can I trade after I had traded for years? And so in a way, someone looking at it objectively might say, this is even kind of a stupid question because you've proven that you can do it. And he tells us later in the email that he was net profitable. but not comfortable with the edge, and we'll talk about that in a moment. So you've proven that you can do it, but I think one reality that you might not be so aware of, I don't understand exactly what you mean by trading in a local FX firm. I'm assuming you traded for a prop firm, and now you've been on your own for about 3 months. That is a major reset. That it's not quite like starting over, but it's very much like starting over. And if you have one of these major upsets, examples, as I said, changing asset classes is certainly a major upset. Coming from some institutional framework, like back 2007, 2008, 2009, I had lots of people lots of friends who were prop traders, risk managers for the big banks. And when the world changed there and they could not trade for the banks, a lot of these people went home and put a computer on their kitchen table and decided to trade for themselves. And many of them, most of them, maybe I'm actually trying to think of an exception that I know of. So let's just say all of them found that trading at home for your own account, even if you still have access to the data, you have sufficient capital, you have everything you think you need for success, it's different enough that you can expect to struggle. So you've been struggling at home for 3 months after trading for a firm for 3 years. You have that success of 3 years, but you've really only been doing this 3 months. That's how I would think about it. So here are 2 messages for you. One is that you need to think about creating your life, creating that framework within which you are not desperate to succeed. And number 2 is you need to be a little gentle with yourself, because this shift that you've gone through does represent a significant restart and recalibration. You're almost starting over. So be kind to yourself, be patient to yourself, be gentle with yourself. And that also kind of works again, if you're really desperate to succeed, some of us are a little competitive, right? A lot of us who trade are exceedingly competitive. And we can sometimes be a little bit unkind to ourselves, and we can push ourselves a little bit too hard. So you need to think about these 3 months properly and realize that you're trying to do something very difficult, and to a very large extent, you're starting over. To be honest, I want to make more than 70% a year. I think it's achievable. The fact that you started this sentence with "to be honest" means that you probably can imagine my face as I'm reading this line. So here's the deal. I say a good rule of thumb over many years is a good, successful trader will make about 20% a year. Now, many people, particularly in currency trading rooms where you can be highly leveraged, will tell me that I am completely stupid. Those people trade very small accounts. They typically blow accounts out. I had a discussion with a guy in a Facebook group that kind of went on for many, many weeks, where he was telling me that you should be able to do hundreds of percent a year, and that he himself was doing it. And then when we got into it a little bit deeper, he was trading accounts that were a few $100s. And what he would do is he would blow them up into several $100s, and then he would take them to zero, and then he would refund the account. So just be aware. Why do I say that? I'm not picking on anybody, but what I want you to understand is that a lot of people who talk about these exceptional returns, they have a different perspective than I have as a professional trader. And I think the perspective that C has is, if he wants to have a career where he is living off of his trading income, you automatically have the perspective of a professional trader. So I suppose there are probably other ways you can do this. The only way that I can see to do it with any degree of reliability is to put together access to a significant pool of capital, and then to plan to make a reasonable percentage return. Now, when I say 20%, some years it'll be a lot more. Some years it may be less. And of course, there's a possibility, depending how you trade, some years you might even have to pay Some years you might lose money. I'm saying years, but if you're a very short-term trader, you could say months, because you're getting a lot more trades in it. And a very skilled short-term trader pretty much should be profitable every year. That is a reasonable expectation. But the returns are let's just say there's probably more drawdown than you think. I don't believe that you can do 70% a year with a risk that represents a significant percentage of your net worth. If you disagree with that, then prove me wrong. Do so in a framework where you take minimal risk on yourself while you're figuring this out. And so I'm not telling you. I'm hedging my words. You probably hear here. I'm not telling you that this is the absolute, but I do believe strongly, very, very strongly, that if you're thinking you're going to make 70% a year, you can absolutely do that, but you're going to take the kinds of risks that means you're going to have very large losses some years. And very large losses could be 100% losses. And if it's a few $100s, you just need to refund the account and re-roll. No big deal, right? But if it's your livelihood, it's quite a different thing. So I don't think it's realistic to think that you will achieve those returns. I would calibrate that down quite a bit lower. Again, it's my experience. During my time working, I never felt I had an edge. I just made technical trades and I cut losses quickly. I was profitable, but there may be some English issues here. So I'm not quite sure what you're saying. I was profitable, but I was not able to live making a small percent of the account. Okay, so what I think is happening here, if I'm understanding correctly, and if not, I apologize, is, first of all, you are profitable. Do you realize that puts you in the elite of the elite? You certainly are in at least 5% of traders, or maybe an even smaller group. So again, back to your desperation, your the angst behind this email. You've already accomplished what very few people can do. You have a number of years where you've been successful, and that's tremendous. But I think what you were seeing was that you weren't able to be that successful. And this also is one of the recurring realities of becoming a professional trader. You realize that the kinds of edges that people talk about, where people are crushing the market. There was a book, a particularly silly book, like what rule the freaking markets, crush the freaking markets. There are books like that. That's not really, that might sell a book, but it's not how you're going to build a career. How you're going to build a career is stacking up those small edges. And then you can think about issues where, like how much leverage can you apply? How variable is your strategy? How much leverage can you apply and still have returns that are reasonably smooth? How can you manage your risk of ruin? And if that's not a concept that you're familiar with, I would Google that and get familiar with that. Basically, it means exactly what you think. What kind of leverage can you apply without raising the risk of blowing your account up to an unacceptable level? Because there's frankly always that risk, but how can you manage that risk? So I suspect that rather than what you're asking me for, you're asking me what can I do better? What kinds of trades can you make? I would look at what you were doing that was working. I would go back and I would look at your methodology. You told me that you are only making technical trades. Of course, I don't know what that means because there are many, many technical trades, but I would look at the types of setups that you were using. You're telling me that you are cutting losses quickly. That is, particularly for short-term traders, that is certainly a common thread with most successful traders. So again, there you're doing something correct. And I would look at what you were doing. I would understand it. I would seek to replicate it at home on your small account, get a reasonably consistent percentage return, and then you can look at what to expand. But let's build that base of success, right? You have the success. You had the success working for the firm. Now you're in a new situation. So let's first of all replicate that success and build on it. And again, going back to in my career, the situations where I transitioned to a new asset class and I really struggled. A lot of times it was, I remember when I first started trading options, I kind of did the standard things. I learned about option pricing, and I had this idea like I would learn to trade these different option structures. And I really struggled. And I had the beautiful, glorious experience that every new option trader has of putting on many trades and being right on the trade and still losing money. Most of you are laughing. You've been there, done that, you know. So what did I do to build success? Well, I looked at what I was doing before, which was directional trades, rather short-term directional trades. And I said, okay, well, you know, it's kind of stupid that I could do a trade here in the underlying and then I do the same thing in the options and I lose. What am I doing wrong? Well, if you're just doing simple directional trades, maybe you shouldn't be doing a vertical. Maybe you should just buy a put or buy a call with an appropriate number of deltas and let the trade work. And once I simplified it like that, and I was able to say, okay, I was doing this, now let me replicate the success in options, and let's see what's the same and what's different, and then build on that. That's one example, but I would say that every big transition for me, when I struggled, the way out of the struggle was to realize, let me say this properly, that when I started in, this is the problem of doing these live with no cuts. So when I made the transition, rather than seeing it as a completely new venture, to try to grab what I could from my previous experience, use that as a base, and see that's what you need to do here. You've been profitable for 3 years. You've been struggling for 3 months, banging your head against the wall. So let's replicate what you were doing for those 3 years. Even if I don't care if the number is, if your green number is, decimal and then 000, whatever. If it's a very, very small degree of profitability, at least let's get green, let's get flat, replicate that, get rid of the desperation to succeed. So you don't think about how can I make enough money to live off of. You just think about getting the success. And then you figure out how to craft, how to create the life and business situation that you want, that you can get the success that you want. And then there's so many strategies on the internet, but none of them seem to work. You are profitable. You have the strategies. Maybe you don't think your strategies were good. Maybe you don't think, and I am a little bit intrigued by you never feeling you had an edge. And I guess really to get into that, I would say, well, we need to look at your results. I hope you have good trading records from your 3 years. If you don't, start today. Just start keeping very disciplined records of every trade you do. And on my trading course, marketlifetrading.com, we do talk about journaling and how to build this framework where you can record your trades. And actually, that's a pretty good reference. I did not do this podcast to plug my trading course, but yeah, there are a lot of strategies on the internet. Frankly, a lot of them don't work. You are correct. But a lot of the things that do work are probably so simple that they're easy to miss. And I do think that a lot of the tools that people talk about, like moving averages, they don't work in the way people would like you to believe they work, but you can use those ideas if you understand how to build and test a trading system. You can have some degree of confidence in your work before you apply risk to it. And I think the way to do that is to, again, my trading course, marketlifetrading.com. There are several membership options there, but there's a free membership option that gives you access to the trading course. If you have not seen that, please see that. And by see that, I mean spend several months with it. You do need confidence. You do need a degree of comfort with your strategies. I think those of us who think deeply, you always have some degree of skepticism, even after many, many hundreds or thousands of trades. And, we always think kind of crazy things like, what if this stops working tomorrow? That's normal. But the fact that you are telling me you never felt like you haven't had an edge, maybe that means you were questing for a stronger edge. But I think if you do some solid analysis of your results and you also educate yourself in other trading approaches, and maybe there's some opportunities here to develop a new edge. Absolutely. But again, where are we starting? With replicating what you were doing. Educate yourself going forward. Set up new frameworks and new structures, but again, build off of that success you've had. And last sentence here, I really like price action, and the possibility of trading with few or no indicators. I guess I would be careful of that. It's very easy to sort of tunnel vision and define ourselves with one way or thing or aspect of trading. And you want to be open. I guess I would say, well, why do you like price action? And by the way, I agree with you. I'm kind of playing devil's advocate here, because I certainly found my trading results became much more stable as I traded with few indicators. But just be careful that you're not making something a goal or objective that should not be. Your goal, what's your goal? Your goal is to trade profitably. Your goal is eventually to have it be a significant source of your income, and your goal is to be comfortable and confident in your edge. Okay, that's the goal. The goal is not necessarily to trade with no indicators. So if you happen to do some work that involves some indicators or calculations, just don't shut that off automatically because you've set up the potentially false goal of trading with no indicators. You understand what I'm saying? You have to structure out what you're doing very clearly. So kind of look back on this, and I know maybe this podcast was more rambling than most, but I thought that this was such an important question that it's an email that I could have written at different points in my career. And in particular, the idea about, I know it seems very backwards, but somehow eventually setting up and driving toward a framework where your desperation for success does not get in your way. That's very, very important. And I suspect for you, the answer is also tied in to the reality of making a realistic percentage return. A lot of things to think about. Bottom line is, I think everything you want to achieve here is possible, certainly doable. I think that you, based on your previous success, I think you probably have a better foundation for success than you realize. So find that foundation again, replicate it in your new at-home setting, and then build forward from there. Okay, for those of you who are listening to the podcast as it's published, I will tell you we are now switching to a twice weekly publication schedule. We've been releasing 3 every week. We're going down to 2, so you'll find these released early in the week and then Thursday. As always, if you have any questions, you can reach me through my blog, adamhgrimes.com. Go check out my website, marketlifetrading.com. And you also should follow me on Twitter at AdamHGrimes. Last thing I will ask, if you like the podcast, subscribe, leave a review. It's so helpful for me. I certainly appreciate it. And tell everybody you know who's struggling, learning to trade, working on becoming better traders. Tell them about the podcast. Tell everybody you know. And I will see you back for another episode very soon. Thank you very much.
Well, it's never hard